One of the things that I see popping up on the internet around Dungeons & Dragons generally quite a lot with 5th edition is whether or not min-maxing is a good or a bad thing, and here's 3 reasons why I think it's possibly the worst thing you can do in D&D. Firstly, mechanically, the dungeon master, or the person running the game, is going to have to change the way the entire game is run for everybody in order to compensate for your min-maxing. Now, 5th edition especially has been created in a way that averages are what makes the game work. Every class, every race, every spell, every weapon, every magic item is all weighted so that at different levels, things generally do the same amount of damage or have the same amount of chance to succeed. When you start to break that average dramatically, and in some cases min-maxed characters can massively skew the average of a party, you find that the Dungeon Master needs to stop looking at the party as a whole and start focusing on you in particular, and that's a real problem. Think about it this way. In 5th edition, most campaigns, encounters, things that the Dungeon Master's Guide builds up, they're all based on the idea that 4 people of various classes and skills will roughly compensate for each other and create a sort of functional body. Now, if you skew that in a dramatic way, so your character does way more damage than they should do, or is way harder to hit than they should do, the Dungeon Master starts changing all those encounters so that they can get to you. And what you'll find is that you negate the usefulness of every other character in your party. Say the Goblin, that for everybody else should have 6 health, and every other campaign it has 6 health, suddenly has 56 health, because your character's doing 70 damage per round. That's not very fun for the dagger-wielding cleric who had a really cool idea and actually is a much more memorable character than yours, because they can come along and suddenly they've been made to feel worthless because the game has changed in that way. The other more specifically selfish reason is that you will not feel any better by min-maxing your character, and it's a difficult concept, but let's say for instance you double the damage that an average character of your level should do. You'll find that you just fight twice as hard enemies because the Dungeon Master will just scale things up, so you won't feel any more powerful. In fact, your character will be far more likely to die because you'll be coming up against deadly encounters over and over and over, as opposed to the standard to difficult balance that any party should raise. You won't feel any better going through the game having challenge ratings of your monsters that you're coming up against raised. It's a totally false economy. The second big reason is more of a mechanical thing. People often get so caught up in the mechanics of D&D that they forget actually that it's a game, and that's quite an important concept. The whole reason people play Dungeons & Dragons is to have fun, typically with friends, believe it or not. And if you get massively caught up in really beating the game like it's an exam, and I've seen examples where people really do treat the entire player's handbook as in an exam that they have to pass every single test or skill check that they come across, they forget the big important reasons of actually what makes the game fun. Talking to people, relying on other people. Actually, that encounter that you failed at and then you had to come back and reassess a second time, that's going to be memorable. The best example I could give is being successful against the odds in that way, really being resourceful. If you come across the dragon that should be pretty impossible for your party to kill, and you don't have a min-maxer in your party that could kill it, you have to rely on NPCs, you have to rely on that clever thinking in the moment, that incredible trap, that use of the spell that's slightly different to how you would normally use it. Those are the things that are going to be fantastic talking points later down the line, not just Eldritch Blast, Twinned Eldritch Blast. Do you know what I mean? There are lots of min-maxy ways that people would approach that encounter, and yes, you can do 70 damage in a turn and kill the adult red dragon at level 5, but I can guarantee it's just not worth it. Finally, the biggest thing that I've noticed and I could communicate is that creativity is the thing that's memorable in D&D, not using the same min-maxed cliche over and over. And there are some hilariously overused cliches of min-maxed characters that can be out there. Certain archer builds, certain Nova builds, certain tanky builds that have exactly the same stats and races and classes and weapons that pop up every time. And that's fine, but that's not as interesting as the cleric who turns up trying to use daggers, or the fighter that uses their fists but isn't a monk. Taking a class, an idea, a personality for a character, and running with that as your focal point is so much more interesting than taking a book and saying, this weapon does a D8, not a D6. Well, for whatever reason, my character uses a rapier now. Why? What does that gain you apart from an average of 1 damage per round more? Just don't look at it that way. Build a character, have some fun with the personality, tropes, something that you're going to remember. It will be worth it down the line. Don't min-max, it's never worth it.